Welcome everyone to the Kendall Report. It is Monday evening. We had quite the day today. We had a big time reversal outside bar. I'll talk about the trade that I always talk about when this happens. I'll go through that in the technical section here in a few minutes. And there's really not a lot to talk about as we come into Tuesday. We're really all getting set up for the Fed on Wednesday. So I'll go through some of the details here. Yesterday, pretty impressive rally, especially at the end of the day, and it followed through. We're still seeing some follow through. I think we will see some backfilling overnight, but that's yet to be seen. There's plenty of sellers still out there, and it's hard to find a bull yet. So I can just looking at the timeline. So before I get into this video tonight, but go ahead and make sure you hit the like button while we're sitting here talking and subscribe to the channel. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the economic reports that are coming out today. We got housing starts on today, meaning Tuesday. Housing starts coming in at 1.4 million and permits at 1.6 million. And I do expect to see those numbers come in less. It was interesting that the home builders did really well today in spite of how bad things are. I saw a number of reports that home builders are actually dropping prices. So if you want a new home, if you're in the right area, there's some pretty good places to buy homes right now. They're discounting them anywhere I've seen between 10 and 20%. So we're definitely seeing some softening in prices. And, how would you like to be the one that bought a house 3 months ago at full price? Now they're discounting them 10, 15, 20%. That's never any fun. And so they're just, housing is going to be in focus as we come into Tuesday. Before I get too deep, and I forget to tell you, on Wednesday, I'm going to do a live stream. We're going to hang out and do Fed together. So at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're doing a live stream from 1 to 4, just like the old days. So we'll do that. Hopefully we'll get into some times. Maybe I can cover some individual stocks, do some of those things as well. Those are always fun to do. Just real quick, like I said, recap: S&P up 0.69, NASDAQ up 0.76, Russell up 0.81. And I saw some encouraging news, especially for some of you in Germany, that the government's waking up there. They realize they can't shut down any energy plants. And I saw an announcement by, I think it was whatever they call it, whether it's Secretary Treasurer of Energy, whoever runs that part. I don't know the structure well, but they're saying no way we're closing anything. So that's good. I saw another weird story come out that Venezuela had some big oil refinery burn. These things are happening all over the planet. How is it that there has been fires, but nothing where they're back to back? We've had multiple ones here in this country, and is this by design? Is somebody out there sabotaging the fossil fuels, which are necessary for all of us to live, and is going to be necessary for decades to come? It's getting interesting, folks, and it's not looking like this is by accident anymore. Let's see here. Just go through my notes. Like I said, there's really not a lot to set up. The technicals are going to be where the important part of tonight's video will be. I did see Ford got hammered. Nobody's safe anymore. We saw. It was interesting. We were talking in the live room today about the inverse Jim Cramer ETF. Cramer's all negative on NVIDIA, and we looked at it, and there looks like there's buys across the board. This guy's really good. He's the best fade out there. Just looking at a couple other notes here. The 2-year printed up to 3.97, the 10-year up at 3.51, and nobody cared. This keeps happening. Nobody cares about these yields right now. They're just part of the markets now. No one's really getting freaked out. I remember the first time we trade 360, you thought the end of the world was coming, and then we backed off all the way into the 280 handle and a little bit less. But from the standpoint of printing up at 4% on the 2-year, that's pretty amazing. And we'll go through all the details here in just a minute. Really, that's about it. Let's go ahead and get into the database, and we should be able to get through tonight's video pretty quick, actually. And I think the setup is pretty obvious coming into tomorrow. So let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, as we look at the Wavetech database, there was 552 sell signals, 185 buys. We moved the meter down to 34.79 bullish. It was 36.93 yesterday. So we're continuing to see some selling, but what's interesting is the selling's already moderated. We had huge selling yesterday. There was 27 sell signals for this morning. So it was basically a lot of this stuff has already been dumped out. I don't know if that's going to be it. Typically, the numbers to watch for on the database will be 28% is the next critical number. This is basically in neutral zone, not bullish or bearish as it stands right now. We're really just kind of moved neutral into the pattern. And I think it's interesting that today we got this big outside reversal bar. And I'm going to direct you. I need to do this really bad because this trade seems to be coming up more often. So I need to put a individual video together just on this trade. But I'll set it up a little bit for you, talk about it. We had one when we traded the last time we made a low. I'll show you that and what's set up. I'll do my best to draw this out. But I will do a special video on this because it's just too important of a trade. It's been a staple of my trading going back to probably 1983, maybe 82 is when I first saw this trade and had figured out the rules for it over the next, I don't know, 20 or 30 trades that this happens. And it happens on, I'll get through that here in a minute, so I won't go through a lot of details. But the database looks like it's maybe about to stabilize already. We'll see what type of action we get. And with this, if this trade that I'm going to show you here in a minute follows through, then we're likely to see the database stabilize as well, right as we come in down around this 3850 number. That was the S1 number on the monthly, so we printed that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the technicals. All right, as we look at the S&P, and like I said, I'm going to do my best to unpack this trade, but we made a lower low than Friday and then reverse. So there was plenty of sellers early on. Market started to firm up. We had some great trades in the live room today. There was some really excellent setups, especially as we came into the end of the session today. It was pretty amazing. It was just a perfect setup. I talk about this 1, 2, 3 trade, like an ABC or a 1, 2, 3 trade to set up. It was absolutely perfect. It was good for about almost 30 handles, as it turns out. So it was pretty big setup for that reversal, especially as we came into that final hour. And there was plenty of folks looking to cover up. I think they caught all the doomsayers short, and they had to cover them up by the end of the session. And I think there's still probably some stragglers out there. So this, I'll just talk about this pattern for just a minute. But this is what I've been saying. I know that I talked about some of the new downward objectives. So just make sure that you understand that last night when I was going through the numbers, I was talking about some longer term objectives and then the short term. The short term scenario is that we stabilize here ahead of the Fed. We'll find out more as we come into the Fed. There is some limitations. I put some caps on there. I'll try to refocus on those as we go through tonight's video. But there's definitely a short-term bias here, especially after the reversal pattern today. I absolutely love these patterns that set up because we printed this. Not only was it an outside bar, but it was done at the low of the pattern. And that's really makes it good. And I'll set up all the pattern. I'm going to do my best to give you the rules. I'm also going to direct you to a video that I did. Every time this comes up, I do it, but it will help you to understand because the rules are there. In the case of the video I'm going to tell you to watch, if you're interested in this trade, is actually a short trade. So all the rules are inverse. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to do a video just for this trade. It's well deserving. It's just it's a trade that when it works, it's a very big trade. So anyway, what we saw yesterday was that outside reversal. Let's go ahead and just take a look at the pattern, and I'll do my best here to blow it up. So let me get a tool out so I can draw this, because this is the trade that I'm talking about here. And I want to show you the previous trade. And this was the trade that we got right at this bar right here. This was the outside bar. This is the criteria. The day of the reversal, which I'll draw over here, is yesterday. We need to also close in the upper 60% of the range, which we did today. So we've got that. Typically what you want to do is buy a lower opening the next day. In the case of this first trade, let me back this up just a little bit. In this first trade, we got the reversal bar. The next day, we got a lower a lower opening, but we also had a move down to about S2. And then the rules are that you have to make a new high of the reversal day, and you have to close higher. If you close lower, you're out of the trade. So the deal is you buy weakness on, so as we're trading right now, you would want to buy some weakness. Right now, we're up 7 handles. You want to try to buy some weakness, whether it's unchanged to lower, and you try to time that entry. But the goal is to get that entry, and then it has to close higher. If it doesn't close higher tomorrow, this trade is over. So that's the beauty of this trade, is once it starts, it's over really quick if you don't get the rules. So I'm just going to give you the first 2 days, and I'll talk about this if we get confirmation. No reason to go any further than that, and I'll direct you to that video that I was talking about a few minutes ago. So we got, in this first case, going back a few weeks ago, it's a 3-day trade. So we had this day, this day, this day. On the 4th day, if you make a new high, you take profits. It was absolutely perfect. That was the day we printed 41.75. And that opportunity was there for about 33 seconds. If you didn't hit right when the news came out on the CPI that day, you missed this trade, or you got it off absolute not so good, just because of the volatility that was there. So let me just take this out. Let's go to this current trade. So we have the reversal. We've actually made a new high already, so we've met part of the criteria. All we have to do now is make a higher close, and the key is we can't take out yesterday's low. That's probabilities are very low at that point. So let's get into the normal analysis that I do, and that'll set up there. So I want you to have that. The video I want you to go to is on the channel. I'll make sure we put that, maybe we'll attach it to tonight's video to make sure you get that. And it's basically called How to Short Apple. It's a trade that was done, I think it was a 21 trade on one of the Apple reversal trades that happened. It was a really good trade for Apple, and we'll see if this one works out. The beauty is, like I said, if it doesn't close higher tomorrow, you're already out, and you should have very low risk. That's the beauty of the trade itself, is that when you get the trade on, you know by the end of the session whether you're going to hold overnight. And then the next day, just so in case we don't talk until ahead of there, then the low of Tuesday will be where the stop goes. So the stop goes under that next day's low, and I'll walk you through the rest of that. But watch that video. The rules are there. They're just inverse for a short trade, so just take the opposite of what it says. And like I said, I'm going to get a video out because this is always something I watch for. And the important, it's not just any outside bar. It's one like we got today that came at the bottom of a sequence. So we had 5 days down. This was the 5th day today. We got the reversal. So I'm going to expect we have 5 down, get 3 up, and then there's a potential for a 3 or 5 down, which would probably make a new low, and then maybe the bears will be satisfied. And if you think about it, it's perfect timing, because that takes us right into Wednesday. So Thursday, Friday would be the backside of this. Chances of getting a 5-5 pattern usually isn't very likely, especially after the steepness of the previous decline. So let's talk about the PPMs here and what's going on as far as the setup. Good news is also, to confirm this, is we have the PPMs they're flat right now. PPM 1 is 0.01 negative, so it's basically flat. Tells us there is about there's a 90% probability that it will challenge 3980. This is a big number. And if it does get up there, then it'll probably go through it and probably head to 4020. Last night I told you 4020 is the cap of this market. That is the case, except we're seeing momentum bleed off very quickly. So this analysis could change depending on how this trade works out. But basically, the pattern right now should challenge the 39.80 level. Let's look at the grid for today. It's interesting. 39.85 is RXT. I don't expect that level to be challenged today. I am looking at potential for 39.33. S1 is 39.01. And if I were playing this trade, I'd want to try to get this, try to buy in around the 39.01 level. As we watched the market trade intraday yesterday, there was quite a bit. 39.0350 was the early morning high, and yesterday that was R1. So we did R1 S3, and then we rebounded and took out R1 and printed R2. A very interesting day, pretty volatile. So that was the action itself, told you a lot about the session. So as like I said, we've already, so far the high's been 34 overnight. Yesterday's high was 27. So we've already printed a new high. We just have to close higher. Yesterday's close, like I said, was 17. So we're 24, we're up 7. I suspect that we'll move up, possibility of moving up into R2, 39.51. I really don't see R3, RXT, especially before the Fed comes out, but we should be able to probably keep some short covering coming in tomorrow. And I think you'll see as we go through some of the other charts, some confirmations here. Next, we'll look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ did not get an outside reversal, just the S&P. We did manage to close higher. The low on Friday was 11,778. Yesterday's low, 11,792. So we didn't get the new low. But regardless of that, we're seeing the PPMs trying to turn up. There's still a lot of downward pressure here on the NASDAQ between the 12,258 and 12,414. We look at the market grid for today, you're going to see right in that number, R2 is 12,155. So far, we've had 12,092. So the possibility that the volatility is a bit higher on the NASDAQ, we could see a 12,225. And a key level to watch for all of these markets will be S1. If we take S1 out on these, both the S&P and the NASDAQ, then that will taint a little bit of the upward bias. But I think we'll continue to see folks just staying cautious ahead of the Fed on Wednesday anyway. So as we look at this pattern setup, you see PPM2 is starting to turn up here. It's still negative. And so that just tells you that there's major resistance at the numbers I just mentioned, 12,400. I'm just rounding numbers off. That's going to be a key level to watch out for on the upside. 12,002, we're just going to call it 12,250 to 12,400 is major resistance. But it looks like the market's going to want to try to trade in there. But we're just looking at the market grid, 12,155 is R2, R3, 12,224. Key pivot on the downside, 11,962 on the downside. So that's your pivot. We take that out. That will spell a little bit of trouble for the, especially same thing on the S&P, because if we take out that S1 number, then we're starting to fade a little too deep into the pattern and probably not going to get a higher close in. But it looks like to me everything's set for a move to close higher and get a confirmation of that 3-day trade. Go ahead and take a look at RTY. We're up 0.23, up 420 on RTY. 1845 is the 10-period moving average. PPMs are positive here, and I've been, this is the same story every night just because of the way that these indexes are configured, but we're at a positive 0.13 right now on PPM1. PPM2 is still negative as well, but the resistance is right now 1845, 1860. We look at the market grid, R2, 1841, so that maps out pretty good with the 10-period moving average. 1852 is the R3. So if we did get up there, that would be right at the 21-period moving average. So there would be quite a bit of resistance. Key number, 1809 on the downside. That's your pivot to the downside. We take out that number, that's going to cause a bit more of a reaction to the downside. I think we'll hold all these S1 numbers for the most part. We should come very close. These aren't exact numbers, but watch for any type of support bounce or anything. The activity around these numbers are going to be really important. All right, next we'll take a look at the 10-year. 10-year continues to get just a little bit squeezed here into the pattern. We're seeing the narrowing of the market grid. Right now we're looking at R1 350, 3.505, R2 3.52, and extreme 55 on the upside. And yesterday, we can look at the action yesterday, the high 351, that was just a touch over R3. We almost printed RXT again. So there's just a lot of selling going on in the bonds. In spite of the stronger dollar, you're seeing lower bonds, therefore higher yields. So that's really what's pushing the dollar here. So we're not really seeing any buying coming in of any sort here yet, especially before the Fed. I don't see that happening. But this, we're seeing the PPMs trying to turn back up and then reaccelerate again. So these rates are just going to be really, from a yield standpoint, are going to be very well supported at these higher yields. And I'm going to bring up the weekly just to remind you of these numbers, as the targets on the weekly are still valid at 360. I'm rounding numbers off, and 378. So we're looking at 378 as a peak. We've got some fib targets up there for the yields to go to. PPMs are just accelerating, 1.86 on PPM 1, 0.96 and 2.06 on PPM 3. So the angle of attack, the trends here are very strong. They're not going anywhere from the standpoint of any downside in yields is very unlikely. It doesn't mean we can't pull back in within the grid. This is a weekly grid, so that number would suggest you could come in into 340. I doubt if we get much below that, but S2 would be 3.35 rounding off. So that's going to be your floor, but the way they're accelerating, there doesn't appear to be anything that's looking like lower yields, or even a downtick in yields are very, very likely. Not outside of these grid numbers that I just stated, both on the daily and the weekly as extremes. All right, so we'll take a look at crude oil next. Crude at 85.87. We're finally starting to see there's a pattern here that is important to pay attention to. Let me just blow this up just a little bit and bring it into focus. And that's that 10-period moving average coming down through the grid. We just got a crossover on the 40 and the 10. This is weekly now. That typically will set up some kind of bottom here. And so, as I've been talking about, this 80 handle. 81, 82 is going to be really well supported. And on the upside, around 89 is just going to be locked in. We're just going to remain in that mode. And I guess I don't see, we're not looking at gasoline, but it's interesting. These refineries that I mentioned earlier, there's a number of them that have caught on fire and continued to have really interesting things. The one in Venezuela, I saw photographs of. I mean, that's not a little bonfire. This thing is fully on fire. The entire plant looks like it's gone up. So that place is not going to be doing anything of any sort. So once again, just fossil fuels getting squeezed, whether it's by design or something appears to be going on. I'm not going to throw a lot of conspiracy theory out there, but it's definitely some things going on here that are starting to add up to something if you're paying attention. So the crude should stay in that range. Like I said, 82, 80 absolute extreme. I don't see a 70 handle coming into play. And then ultimately we've got the cap right around 89, and there's some 90 numbers, but I think that's going to be the range. So you should be able to trade the heck out of that thing between those parameters and really do quite well, because so far this week we've had 81.73 and 85.88 as a high. We're trading close to the high end of the week so far, and it's Tuesday. It's just Monday, right? So we've got a whole week ahead of us. So just look for those numbers to hold in that range. All right, next we'll take a look at gold. This is weekly gold. We'll stick with that. PPM1 looks awesome, even though it's negative. It's turning up. It's its first, second derivative. PPM2 is trying to turn up. I talked about these downward projections here. 1620 is fib target 1. We had that cycle come in last week. So far, the low was 1661. We have not taken out last week's low, so I'm going to go with this cycle low is still in place. As long as we hold that 1661, that's good. And if we look at the market grid on a weekly basis for gold, and we're looking at R1 1697. We printed up to 88. Above that, back over to 1700 handle, back to 1713, and so far 1669 is S1. So we printed S1, working on R1, probably just based on the way the PPMs work and look here in this configuration, is we're probably going to move and challenge the 1700 handle, maybe get up to toward the 1713 R2 number on a weekly basis. Okay, so next we'll do Bitcoin. I'm going to expand this chart out as well, just to try to get, just so we can see this pattern, the most recent pattern. And we did it got pretty ugly. We printed down to 18,691. I've been telling you the low to watch for is 18,635. We did not take that out. We're bouncing a little bit, and PPMs are trying to turn up again. So it's interesting because of this correlation factor that folks talk about with especially with the NASDAQ. This thing is starting to look like it's still trying to put in a bottom here. We've held the key levels, and I mentioned that when I looked at I think maybe I looked at it in I looked at it in the live room today, and there is some downward projections for Bitcoin, and just because they're there doesn't mean they'll get hit. the PPMs are still all trying to turn up here. They're negative, but they're trying to set up a formation that typically ends up to be a low. We did have a long position. It exited there. And now what we're looking at is the downward projection, 16,112, 13,5, and 12,000 even. I don't see them as valid at the moment just because of the formation here of the PPMs. And PPM1 is only down minus 0.13. So a move back above 23.23 would about $1,000 higher than where we are right now will at least stabilize this market. Just don't. That key number to watch for is the number I mentioned just a minute ago. Let me bring up the weekly. Is 18,635. That's the number to watch for. Okay, folks, that's going to do for the video tonight. I just tried to get through everything really good. I think tomorrow's set up pretty interesting from the standpoint of the configurations I talked about on the technicals, on the indexes, and it looks to me that we're going to probably play out as expected, but just watch those S1 numbers on all of the indexes. So those of you who have the indicators, you have them right on you. So watch those numbers, and we'll see how that all plays out. If you haven't got the indicators yet, go here. And I would just tell you that we've got a special offer coming. I'll announce it on Wednesday's live stream. So I will talk to you then. Yeah, I see somebody just real quick comment. We're in a global recession. Just remember, the market and the economy aren't the same thing. The market's not the economy. So yeah, so anyway, good luck everyone. Have a good day trading. I will see you tomorrow night, same place. And then on Wednesday, remember, I'll be doing a live stream during the Powell announcement. Will come on at 1 o'clock on Wednesday for a live stream. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.